Hey world, Dan Brown here with a very special episode of Pogo Bat. Today I'm going to be ranking the 2020 Democratic presidential primary field for the United States of America, ranking them according to my preference as opposed to power rankings. Those are really two separate conversations. It's not a list of who I think is the most likely to win the thing necessarily. It's more a list of just, my favorites. Okay, two separate conversations. Mainstream media does not do a great job in this country of differentiating between those two conversations. They're very caught up in the whole horse race element of it all. But let's just get right into it. I'm going to start with the category I have dubbed the absolutely unacceptables. 2020, this election, it's not just about Donald Trump and defeating Donald Trump. If we let Donald Trump define the contours of debate like that, we're already ceding ground to him. Okay, what this is about is runaway capitalism that is leading us to climate catastrophe that imperils our future, which is a nice way of saying might kill us. Increasingly looking like it will probably kill us if we don't do something about it yesterday. And at the very least in 2020. Okay, if the Democratic Party cannot rise to the challenge and be the vehicle by which we address this broader crisis that Trump is merely a symptom of, yes, a very bad symptom, but he is just a symptom of this deeper problem, then, in my view, it's time for the Democratic Party to no longer exist. At that point, they're just getting in the way. The old road is rapidly fading. Please get out of the new one if you can't lend a hand. The times they are a-changing. My rules, okay, the absolutely unacceptables include any billionaire, okay, no to Michael Bloomberg, no to Howard Schultz. I know they're probably going to run as independents, but they definitely should not have a home in the Democratic Party. This is not a moment for billionaires. And no radical centrists who came to prominence in the 80s and 90s. No to Hillary Clinton again. No to Joe Biden. Okay, no Biden. No Biden, Joe Biden. I recognize I might not get my dream leftist candidate. Okay, I am willing to compromise for the greater good in service of defeating Donald Trump or Mike Pence, whoever happens to be president, or whoever else might be president at that point. Who knows what we're in for over the next year or so. But there is a line, and the Democratic Party establishment needs to know that there is a line. If they don't want a repeat of 2016, the left needs an indication that the party establishment is looking to the future and not clinging to their past and people from their past that they might owe some fealty to. Or feel as though they do. So anyway, those are the absolutely unacceptables. One step above that is a group I call the I can hold my nosers. These are candidates that I will not lift a finger for in the primaries, but should they win the nomination, which I recognize is a very real possibility, I would at that point, of course, do everything in my power to help them defeat Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or whoever else it might be. And number 7, the very back of the pack, a candidate that I'd have to hold my nose very, very firmly on a general election day to vote for President Booker. Hard to even say that. His persona is so relentlessly sunny and cheesy that one could be forgiven for not knowing just how cozy he has spent his entire career with Big Pharma and Wall Street, and how aligned he is with Trump's education secretary Betsy DeVos when it comes to their shared goal of privatizing public education, replacing public education with charter schools, right? Cory Booker is the son of corporate executives, and the importance of corporate power, I think, is just central to his worldview. I think he takes it for granted, and he's risen to power in New Jersey, which is home to all sorts of the largest corporations and hedge funds, and a lot of the people who work on Wall Street. A lot of the work of Wall Street is done in New Jersey these days. Wall Street is just kind of an avatar. The business is not mostly done there anymore. A lot of it is done in New Jersey. All this is to say, Cory Booker has, hitched his wagon to these people. He might be a good fit for New Jersey, but that doesn't make him a good standard bearer for the nation at large. There are articles below talking more about how problematic Cory Booker is. Very I'd hold my nose, but I frankly don't see him gaining a whole lot of traction in this primary. I don't know really where his base comes out of. There are other, even if you're okay with voting for a candidate that I might consider problematic, I just think you'd probably trend towards someone other than Cory Booker regardless. But anyway, number 6, a little better than Cory Booker, I have Beto O'Rourke. Yes, everyone wanted to see him defeat Ted Cruz, but people forget that was mostly about Ted Cruz. It's not that there's anything particularly special about Beto O'Rourke. Ted Cruz is the reason that the whole nation tuned into that race, is the whole reason that so many people just threw money at Beto O'Rourke, because if he had beaten Ted Cruz, it would have made Ted Cruz so sad. He would have been so sad, and that would have made so many of us so happy to see him have to give a concession speech. Beto, he just kind of looks like a lukewarm Democrat when you take Ted Cruz out of the equation. We need more than just star power and fundraising ability. A lot of the so-called Obama people who worked for Obama's campaigns and then worked in Washington throughout the Obama administration and pride themselves on knowing the inside baseball of the thing and knowing the kind of brass tacks of what it takes to run a campaign and win an election. They're really into O'Rourke, but I think that they have a problem seeing the forest for the trees. Yes, his ability to raise a whole bunch of money and the fact that he has high name recognition nationally means that he could compete in a Super Tuesday that has the 2 most populous states, has California and Texas, as early as they've ever been in the process, which is going to make it more difficult for candidates that don't already have that base of support and that name recognition to be there. But where is the soul? Where's the soul in that? Where's the ideological underpinnings that you can build a broader movement out of with O'Rourke? He's just the highest office he's ever held was the House of Representatives in West Texas, which is not nothing. We've had presidents that have only been members of the House before, but there's an article in the description in Jacobin that talks about how Beto-mania kind of betrays this problem the left has, and the Democratic Party specifically has, where we are overly fixated on the office of president itself. And in service of trying to win the presidency, we totally overlook down-ballot races. Throughout Obama's entire administration, Democrats suffered really, really damaging losses in state houses. In elections for dog catcher, Republicans just made inroads, and it's going to take decades to undo the damage being done by Republican state legislatures all over the country. O'Rourke, I think that he would be a representative of the same problem there that we had with Obama. Like, he would definitely be a step forward for Texas. So let's keep him there. I'm not so sure that he'd be as big a step forward for the U.S. overall. Not sure that he should be the standard bearer. Coming in at number 5, have Kamala Harris. She's a former prosecutor, and she claims that she was a, quote, progressive prosecutor. But that means a very specific set of things. That means like digging in your heels even when the personal politics become challenging, right? Standing by the values of a progressive prosecutor even when it's hard to do so. And when given opportunity after opportunity to do that, it's not really, it doesn't seem like she did. Okay, she fought to uphold multiple wrongful convictions even when there was like evidence tampering and witness tampering. She appealed a decision by the California Supreme Court that made the death penalty unconstitutional in California. She was like, wait a minute, I want to still be able to sentence people to death. That's not a very progressive thing. She could have just done nothing. She could have done nothing, but instead she's like, I want the death penalty. She went out of her way to say she wanted the death penalty. She was asked about legalizing marijuana, and she laughed. I'm not saying that's her current position, but when she was a prosecutor, she definitely wanted to continue being able to toss people into jail for minor drug offenses. It sounds to me like a pretty typical cop, and I don't know that I want a cop to be president in 2020. Now, that was all a very long time ago, and I very much believe in allowing candidates for any office to demonstrate that they've turned a new leaf, that they've changed, that their horizons have been broadened. I mean, they are people too, right? And there are a lot of things to like about Harris. You know, I would like to be able to support Kamala Harris, but when given the opportunity to talk about her problematic past as a prosecutor, she offered no apologies. She was on CNN recently and she dug in her heels. She's, running on her record as though it is pristine and as though people on the left can just be okay with it and should just be okay with it. She deflects from the questions rather than wrestling with them. And I can't help but feel a little bit gaslit in those moments. Like, Kamala Harris, why can't you reach out and try to put me at ease? I don't know. Maybe I'm not the sort of voter that she wants. Maybe she's given up on voters from the left and is trying to play to Hillary Clinton's coalition. Like, I do believe that Harris is more likely to pursue criminal justice reform in a genuine way than Cory Booker, that I trust Cory Booker to pursue, reform of Wall Street or, the big pharmaceutical companies. Like, I can see where maybe the problems as a prosecutor come from the problems of being who she is, occupying a position of power and feeling like if she really stood by her deep down ideals, that it would imperil her political future. And that's a calculus that, people like me never have to make, that a lot of politicians never have to make. But at the same time, like, that's a lot of rationalization that I'm doing to try to figure out a way that I can support her. I wish she could just talk to me. I wish she could just say something that would put me at ease, but she hasn't done it. And so I can't say I'd be enthusiastic about a Harris presidency, but I if she wins the nomination, would absolutely support her. There's an episode of Deconstructed Podcast, one of my favorite podcasts, in the description where they talk about her past as a right-wing prosecutor. Number 4, have Kirsten Gillibrand. When she was first elected to the United States House, she was solidly, obviously, it was self-described, I would guess, a conservative Democrat. Okay, she was serving a district in upstate New York that was center-right, so her politics matched. She voted for George W. Bush's tax cuts. She voted to expand the surveillance state, against gay marriage, all sorts of anti-immigrant positions. But the funniest thing happened. Okay, Obama was elected president, and he made Hillary Clinton his Secretary of State, which meant that there was a vacancy for a United States Senate seat in New York, and she was appointed to fill it. And the minute she had an opportunity to, she was like, boom, I'm to the left now. And she became a pretty run-of-the-mill Democrat, a pretty center-left Democrat, kind of what the average Democrat would be. And yet again, before running for president, she has tacked left. It's like every opportunity she has, she does tack left. And like I was saying earlier, I absolutely believe in giving candidates an opportunity to demonstrate that they've turned a new leaf. And, even if I am somewhat skeptical of what might be in her heart of hearts, I mean, her political mentors were Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer, who, are both very problematic in their own right, both very cozy with Wall Street. And Gillibrand, of course, is also cozy with Wall Street, would need a sign of good faith that, she would do something about the excesses of capitalism and the excesses of Wall Street. And I'm not certain that she'll do that, but before running for president this time, she was the first senator to come out in support of abolishing ICE. She was the first senator to come out in support of a federal jobs guarantee. Those are real deal policies. Okay, that's great to hear. And if she has evolved, if she seems like an open book. I want to give her the chance to demonstrate that she really will fight for those things, and regardless of what she really believes. If she campaigns on those issues, if she makes promises during the presidential campaign and ultimately wins, it doesn't really matter what she thinks. She's going to be tied into delivering on those, or else it will imperil her re-election prospects. And so, she could be a force for good. I was surprised that Voices I Trust, once again on Deconstructed Podcast, link in the description. I was surprised. I kind of lumped her in with the candidates that I mentioned immediately before her as being like hopelessly centrist. Like, I could never support her. But, sounds like people that I trust are at least open to where she might land as we get a little bit further into this primary process. But I'm in wait and see mode. I'm in wait and see. I doubt that I would support her in a primary, but I might be a little more enthusiastic about her in a general election should she get that far. I want to take a break here from the exact numbered list to talk about what I'm calling the magical Christmas landers. Magical Christmas land is a term I'm borrowing from Magic the Gathering when you talk about a board state that is incredibly unlikely but results in incredibly ridiculous things happening in the game. It's the same land where if a Bizarro World version of Dan Brown in 2015 was making this video for the Republican side, this would be the slide where I talk about Trump. Okay, so obviously it's possible. Obviously there's a question of, is there a Trump of the left? Is there someone who could swoop in out of the blue and use the power of their personality and camera skills to stand out from a really crowded primary field? I'm not going to try to assign a number to these hypothetical candidates because they're not politicians, so they don't have a record. So, we don't really know where they stand until they tell us where they stand. So they're all open books in that regard, and probably all over the map ideologically. And, any one of these people is not particularly likely to run in the first place. I mean, I would be surprised if we didn't have at least one celebrity on the debate stage, but maybe not. Maybe celebrities who are left-minded are less focused on, their own egos and satiating their own egos, and more willing to just let the people who have been politicians continue being politicians. Trump might be a unique right-wing phenomenon, is what I'm getting at. But I don't know. I think it's likely we might see, one of these people, or it would probably be someone else. Just grabbing a name out of a hat. I don't know. There are so many celebrities, but I don't love the idea of the 2020 general election debate stage looking like an episode of Celebrity Deathmatch from 1999. Oprah versus Trump. Well, and Oprah, I should rule her out because she's a billionaire, and this is not a time for billionaires. If Oprah wanted to be president, she should have run in 2000 or 2004. I think we're just too late to ever have a billionaire president at this point. Another billionaire. If Trump is in fact a billionaire, which he probably isn't. He's probably lying about that. He lies about everything. I digress. Okay. Any celebrity who is truly woke, truly on the left side of the Democratic side of the political debate in the United States, and is knowledgeable, has done their homework, they can rattle off, policy points and surround themselves with bright people who will continue to enrich their understanding of these issues. Any celebrity who is one, truly woke, and two, able to reach out through the camera and talk to the American people like people, not like, a politician, not feel like you have some canned lines that you've practiced. That, even if it doesn't wind up, carrying them across the finish line, becoming the Democratic nominee, I think there could be a really valuable role in the Democratic nominating process for someone like that. If nothing else, it just kind of forces all the other candidates and the eventual nominee to really look in the mirror and say, am I coming across as contrived? How can I fix that? How can I work with this person? And really briefly, my dream candidate is a radical left-wing Laverne Cox. Laverne Cox right here. She's famous from Orange is the New Black. My partner and I, we were driving to my partner's house parents' house for Thanksgiving, and I had just read an article in the New York Times about how gay women have a remarkable disproportionate hit rate when they run for public office. Okay, and so that started a conversation with Tracy about, well, who are some gay women celebrities? And I know Laverne Cox. Well, I don't know what Laverne Cox's orientation is. She's a trans woman. So we eventually got to talking about just LGBTQ plus women generally. And the name that we couldn't shake was Laverne Cox. Like, if you've ever seen her act or interviewed, you just kind of intuitively understand how deeply empathetic and caring she is. And we did some research after to try to glean what her politics might be, and there was nothing too specific, like policy-wise, but everything she said seemed to indicate that she might very well be very woke. And you know, I think that it's a feature, not a bug, politically. If you look at Obama, if you look at Donald Trump, they both, I mean, Trump more cynically, of course, but they both represented kind of the far edge of what anyone thought was possible, okay? And yet they won. Like, in a sense, that is a feature, not a bug, because if everyone knows that you being who you are could, of course, someday maybe become president, it's not aspirational at that point. There's nothing to really push for. There's nothing to prove. But like in 2020, I think Laverne Cox could be the very far edge of what is possible and could be a unity candidate. I mean, again, I'm talking about like left-wing Laverne, like socialist Laverne Cox could be a unity candidate for, you know, the left of the party, and also for, you know, more of the Hillary Clinton wing of the party. And that could be a very viable, I mean, I don't know, again, we're in magical Christmas land, probably not going to happen, but I don't want to spend too much more time talking about this. If you know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows Laverne Cox, just try to whisper it up the chain. At the very least, I want her to know that there are at least a couple of people whispering about it, so that if she has any inclination at all to do it, she knows it's not just totally batshit. Okay? I mean, maybe it is, but what isn't? Okay? Moving along. Probably not going to happen. All right, the next category I have called Sherrod Brown's very own category, which is a shorter way of saying candidates who share my values and might win, but I don't see as being the most likely to win, and so I'm not hitting the ground running for them, but could quickly come around if they start doing better than expected. That's the Sherrod Brown category. Well, you know, number 3 is Sherrod Brown. So in that same episode of Deconstructed that surprised me with their openness to Gillibrand candidacy, it starts off by interviewing U.S. Senator from Ohio, Sherrod Brown, positing, wondering aloud if he might be the candidate to defeat Donald Trump in the Rust Belt, which is a term I learned Sherrod Brown doesn't doesn't like. The Rust Belt being Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. That's kind of where Trump surprised everyone and won the election. If he hadn't won those states, would have been a very, very different picture. So in Deconstructed, Mehdi Hassan was wondering, could Sherrod Brown be this person? He's unabashedly progressive, has been his entire career. He speaks the language of economic populism fluently. I don't know about more of the brass tacks concerns. I don't know about his name recognition. I don't know about his campaign organization. I don't know about his ability to fundraise. And policy-wise, there are a couple things. His political base is, are unions in Ohio, like Ohio's manufacturing base, and because their livelihood is dependent on, or it might complicate their livelihood, I should say, to enact new environmental regulations. He's been a little bit waffly on that. He hasn't committed to a Green New Deal, which is a pretty important litmus test for me, to be honest. So I would like to think that if he announces a presidential campaign, as soon as he's on a national stage, he would come around to endorsing a Green New Deal. Would need to see that. Also, he weirdly hedged on Medicare for All. He voted against Bernie Sanders' bill. And he did it in a weird way. He was like, I've been advocating for Medicare for all for my entire career. I just think that right now we should do Medicare at 55, which would be good. If we could get Medicare at 55 passed, that would be progress. I think I maybe disagree with the calculus there. I think that now is the moment for Medicare for all, but he's kind of trying to carve out this niche space for himself where he's on the left side of the Democrats debate. Okay, and it's not even really a question of left-right from there. It's more about style. He seems to be advocating for pragmatic progressivism, incremental change. Let's do what we know we can do and go from there. And I think that's healthy. I think there's definitely room for that in the debate. And aside from that, is very unabashedly progressive. If he beats the odds and starts to catch on and seems to be like the candidate, then I could very quickly get on that bandwagon. And I would lift many fingers for Sherrod Brown in that situation, even before he has the nomination of the Democratic Party. But I'll just have to say, so that's the Sherrod Brown category. The final category I have here, they're called the GOATs, the greatest of all times. 2 candidates, either of which would be the greatest U.S. presidential candidate of all time. Just the policy-wise, either one of these would be so great. Number 2, Elizabeth Warren. If she had run in 2016, hot take here, I think she'd be president right now. We can't go back and see. There's no way to know. But I think it would have been easier for her to peel off some voters from Hillary Clinton than Bernie Sanders. They wouldn't have, stood in such stark opposition to her. I mean, who's to say? Who's to say? But I think if Warren had made the jump, made the leap in 2016, she could very well be living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue right now. I disagree with her belief that her quote, belief in markets right down to her toes. But there is no capitalist that I trust more than Elizabeth Warren to rein in the excesses of Wall Street. She was a tenured professor at Harvard University teaching bankruptcy and commercial law. And, in those 2 subjects was one of the world's 3 foremost experts, and still very much is. She has more expertise when it comes to the machinations of complex financial instruments on Wall Street than any candidate. She's just a brain. She is a brain, and she's charismatic to boot. She's folksy, I dare say. She has more expertise on those things than any candidate, and possibly any person out there at all. She did not get involved in politics because she'd always wanted to, because as a child she dreamed of becoming president. No, she got involved in politics, not to satiate her ego, but because she knows the enemy. She knows Wall Street better than anyone, and she felt duty-bound after the Great Recession in 2008. The Wall Street's entrapment of the poor and middle class is an affront to Elizabeth Warren that cuts to her core, that cuts to her middle-class upbringing, and she is mad as hell on behalf of all of us. Much appreciated, and she is savvy enough to make them pay. I mean, another hot take here about Warren in terms of horsepower up here in the skull. I believe that she will be the smartest candidate on any debate stage. That's not saying that she's necessarily the best. We got Bernie Sanders right here. Oh, and I've got something I want to do real quick. I got a little Shania Twain song pulled up. Let's see, where are we at? Maybe not for life. Not so into the monarchy thing. You're still the one the only one I need. All right, Bernie. Get it on, Bernie. Woo. He's still the one. He's the only candidate actively building a revolutionary movement rather than working within the confines of political norms, right? Sanders, Warren, and Sherrod Brown, I think, all share a core set of values. But where Warren and Brown want to reason with and regulate the system as it is, Sanders wants to topple it. And that's what I want to do too. And I think that's what a lot of Americans consciously recognize now that they want to, after Sanders ran in 2016. But I think he woke that up in a lot of us, and I think there's a lot of consciousness raising and waking up that can still be done through the 2020 presidential election process. Also, Sanders' 2016 presidential bid never really ended, right? He has the name recognition. He has the fundraising network. He has the volunteer army necessary to outflank the rest of the field. I was talking about this way back when we were talking about Beto, but Super Tuesday, that's March 3rd, 2020. It's the earliest that any state that's not Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, or South Carolina is allowed to have their primary. Well, has primaries for the two most populous U.S. states, California and Texas. So, if Sanders can leverage his volunteer army that's ready to go at the drop of a hat to do very, very well there to win those states, perhaps, he could very early in the process, by March 4th, have a delegate advantage that makes the math for any other candidate very, very difficult. So, not only does he reflect my values, not only do I think he has a strong chance of winning, a much stronger chance than he did in 2016, but I also think he is the only candidate really focused on building a movement more than trying to work within and tweak the knobs of the system as it exists right now. I mean, I would be happy to see Sanders as president, Warren as president, even Sherrod Brown should it happen. And the very last thing that I want to see is a dynamic emerging between Bernie and whoever else it might be, even remotely similar to the Bernie-Hillary dynamic. It's important to point out Hillary is to the right of everyone I've talked about other than that first slide of the absolutely unacceptables, which included Hillary. Okay, Hillary is to the right of everyone here. So, defeating Trump and Pence is almost the most important thing. Okay, as long as we're confident that, through defeating them, we are making serious progress towards saving ourselves from climate catastrophe. I mean, and even among my top tier of candidates, even among the GOATs, I have some things I'm looking for. I hope that Warren continues the process of reconciliation with the Cherokee Nation and with Native tribes generally. Like, obviously, she offended the Cherokee Nation most, but claiming an identity that is not yours affects all people of marginalized identities. Like, she should have known better years ago than to try to claim that identity, and she definitely should have known better last year than to fall into Trump's trap. It's not my place to declare this issue over ever. Yes, she has apologized, but I will continue to look to the Cherokee Nation and marginalized people to make sure that they're guiding all of us through the often awkward process of recognizing privilege and grappling with privilege and trying to create a world in the future where more people share in more types of privilege and fewer people feel marginalized and not represented. It was a big mistake, but at the same time, the powers that be in the mainstream media establishment that might feel threatened by Warren's progressivism, I think are disproportionately focusing on this story and trying to continue to stir the pot. But again, it's not my place to declare this story over. It's not Warren's place to declare this story over. And so, if the drip, drip, drip continues, so be it. She made her bed, and that's where it is. But again, I am skeptical of CNN's coverage of this. I'll just put it that way. As it pertains to Sanders, I hope that having a larger and more diverse field of candidates allows him to speak more eloquently about race and gender. In 2016, he definitely could have handled the Black Lives Matter protesters at one of his early rallies a lot better. He could have handled the debate question about spoiling history. It was the PBS debate, and Sanders was on the stage, Clinton was on the stage, and there were two female moderators on the stage, and they asked him, in the context of running against the first woman who might actually win the presidency, are you spoiling history? Okay, think what you may about the question itself. It was kind of a softball opportunity for Sanders to say something that really spoke to the moment and built a bridge with Hillary Clinton supporters and brought some semblance of unity. And instead, what he said was like, well, I'd be historic too. No. He in both those situations sacrificed an opportunity to build a bigger coalition in service of staying on message, right? Stay on the economic populist message. That's what works for you. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes. I don't know how calculated any of this was. But I would like to think that a lack of complexity in the field of candidates kind of percolated its way into a lack of complexity in the discourse in that particular situation. And I'd like to see a little more nuance this go around from the person that I would like to see as the standard bearer for the party and the standard bearer for the movement that will hopefully save us all from climate catastrophe and runaway capitalism generally. So anyway, marathon of a video there. There you go. That is what I think about the primary field as it stands right now. I mean, there are many candidates that I did not touch on, did not talk about. Feel free to bring them up in the comments. If I didn't talk about them, it's probably because I don't really think they're running for, I mean, technically they're running for president, right? But some of them are really running for vice president or for a higher national profile that might let them run for governor or senator or whatever it may be, maybe a cabinet position. Who knows? There are a lot of these smaller time, but yeah, egg could be on my face in a couple years. Who's to say that? What South Bend mayor? What I learned how to say his last name and I have forgotten. It's not Buttigieg, but that's what comes to. It's something like that. Buttigieg. Maybe Buttigieg will be the president. Who knows? Who's to say? All right, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about this list, and subscribe to Pogo. Oh, check out all the links in the description too that I've been referencing.